Right, Rowan, one of the most common things that we hear people say, like, "Oh, I know I brake too much." They don't say it in that voice, right? They like type it or something, or they say
They're
it in their
probably
own voice.
thinking it in that voice.
Yeah, definitely. Like, why do I need a thing that tells me I'm braking too much? That was actually like one of the things that we aim to solve immediately, right? Because like skip past all the just the stuff that we show you and go straight to your key opportunities. And because that's your chance, that's your low hanging fruit to improve. So BrakeAce analyzes all your braking and shows you your 3 key opportunities for improvement. And you might brake a bunch of times in there, and they might look different. And yours and mine will be different on the same trail, and which will be different to you listening while you're driving or while you're riding. Your key opportunities will also be different than ours, and you can unlock new key opportunities on every single trail. And it's never about not braking because that's just scary and ridiculous. But your braking tells you a lot about how you're riding, and your key opportunities are your chance to improve that. And I know you've been working with your partner Kim on. I guess it was kind of your opportunity to to like be there while someone discovers the power of the app for the first time. So like to
Yeah.
experience that firsthand.
I'll
So
step back and say sometimes it is about just not braking.
yeah, yeah.
It's pretty rare though.
Yeah, yeah, it is actually. Like sometimes, I think the most common one where it's about not braking is the brake checks, right? So they're very, very light brake events that are very, very short because we categorize every single event in those domains, including modulation. But if you have a brake check, it's not doing anything anyway, but it does indicate you're probably not confident about what's coming up. So those are the ones to remove.
And exactly that not confident is actually what I see as when you're thinking about the benefits you get from improving your riding, it's more confidence. And once you've got more confidence, then you just naturally go faster as a side effect.
Yeah.
The struggle is, how do you get more confident?
Yeah, well, it sounds like it worked with Kim. And like, because we were talking, so basically how this idea for this episode came up is we were talking about Kim using the app. And we're like, wait, whoa. We should stop talking about this now and continue this conversation while we're recording. Because to me, that's when the best podcasts happen, when you're just like a fly on the wall, like listening to people having a yak.
Yeah, we had a lot to yak about.
So can you like start at the beginning, Kim's first experience of the app?
Yeah, so Kim has used it before. I've given her the BrakeAce a few times, but generally when she's used it, it's been on group rides and just going on like, okay, a bunch of girls together, a few beginners, and she would look at her data and she was super upset. She didn't want to let me see it because she thought I would tell her off.
Oh no.
And so the main reason was her brake balance was at 98% rear brake. And so like, well, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have more brake towards the rear than the front, or
Super common.
It's the normal thing.
Yeah.
However, that probably is something that needs to be looked at because that is almost no front brake. But over the last weekend, we went down south, went 4 hours south to Pemberton. They have real dirt.
What do you mean by real dirt? Do you mean like not gravel?
Not pea gravel. So the riding she had been doing here, super dry, super dusty. And so a bit of stopping for other people as well. And so the braking wasn't actually for any real purpose other than just to go at the same speed as the person in front. And in like riding on marbles, I say it all the time, the Perth riding is complex because of our conditions. However, go down to Pemberton, it's all massive carry trees. It's just deep, dark, thick, grippy dirt.
That sounds
Now,
amazing.
we actually missed the first rain Perth had real rain Perth had for maybe 3 months while we were down there. You're meant to get the rain down there. Instead, it was dry, bit dusty, bit loose, super hard packed. Still so much better than up here. But riding on trails she'd never ridden before. So confidence was down a little because of that, but confidence was up because of the fact that there was traction. And so put the BrakeAce on and said, well, let's pick a trail that we see as a bit of a challenge and see if we can find what is challenging you. Now, something I've been working a lot on recently is trying to push people when they're asking me, like, how do I get faster? Is like, just go ride easier trails, because that's how you get better, is riding somewhere where you do feel confident. And so you can try new things. And so our trail we picked was actually a green trail called Longshanks. And let me just check the Strava stats here. It says it's 1.2 kilometers long with the whole 47 meters of vertical.
Woo!
Which is actually quite a bit for a lot of the trails we've
is it?
around here.
Okay. I'm trying to
But
think 47 meters. Yeah.
It's not a steep trail. There's a couple of sections that point down, not for very long. However, it's a tight trail and the trees are super close. And so it's trees that don't really have any branches. They're just a solid trunk.
So
And
you don't want to hit them. But there's
Yeah.
also not things like that are sticking out to grab you per se.
yeah, so you can
Okay.
really see where you can ride until
Okay,
it
so
gets-
good line of sight? Do you mean
I
like
wouldn't say good line of sight,
okay.
because the corners are still, it's pretty thick still. So the corners can be pretty tough to see around in a few places, which actually ended up being part of the key opportunities we found. But the trail is very well defined.
Cool.
And so we're like, okay, this is the one.
Yeah, it's funny because I always hear people say like how easy trails are boring. I fully don't agree with that. Like, you want to make an easy trail hard? Just go faster.
So I can tell you, I've hit a tree twice in the last 2 weeks. I'm not on good odds at the moment, but both of those times was on a green trail,
Mm,
because they're generally, you've got to make some effort to stay on the trail at speed.
yeah.
Plus, you don't have to go fast. You can find features. So some easy trails are boring. There's just
Yeah,
nothing
yeah,
can be
yeah.
done to save them.
Yeah, I guess because we grade them a little bit differently here in Rotorua, where it's just like grade, I think it's grade 2 to 6 or whatever. And 6 is extreme, but usually just like massive jumps, or it's not on the map. So in which case it's not graded. And then 5 is like expert or whatever. But a 2 is like a commuter trail. A 3 is kind of your easy trail. But generally, because we have like sizable hills, they end up being really, really fast. Those grade 3s, they just end up being insanely fast. And no matter who you are, like, you can pick up speed because the hill's giving it to you. So I find them a bit scary out here,
Yeah.
those green trails or whatever, grade 3s. Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
we've got
scary.
a race season is well and truly underway here. We've got first round of the enduro downhill. I think we had a double header for the XC. Even the cyclocross is on.
Oh, what? All in the
Tentatively-
same time of year?
Yeah, I'll tentatively
Whoa.
include cyclocross with mountain biking just because of the skills.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can't race in the summer, so
Uh,
everything happens in the winter.
Makes sense.
And the next race is the only one that happens actually in Perth for the enduro. And there's a green trail that's been built super wide because it's meant to be inclusive for everybody. And it's terrifying.
Yep.
Because you can go fast.
Yeah.
It's built so that anyone can go down it slow, meaning the corners are pretty wide. It's got a decent bank on the berms, but nothing crazy steep, which means that once you pick up speed, the berms don't hold you. But there's nothing to slow you down.
Yeah. Except your brakes, I guess.
Green
With those
trails can be
bloody
good fun.
trees.
But this one's tight. Longshanks is a bit of a pedal, but not so much pedaling because it's that uphill or that flat. More that you get caught in the tight corners. You come up to a section that it starts being a bit of a corner, and then it might just continue on for a little bit longer. And of course, there's a tree right in the point where you want to be. So you've got to fight to avoid that tree.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can easily lose a lot of speed on the corners, and then it's flat or slightly downhill where you want to just get pedaling again until you hit the next tight corner where you do exactly the same thing. So this is a great trail for working on how can I get around those corners with some flow.
Yeah,
So
because
we're
you get
really
tired when you
working
pedal a
towards,
lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
if we can increase flow, naturally we'll increase speed. But
Yeah.
our goal isn't speed specifically. It's just making it feel like you're riding a bike. And so Kim's description of how she felt going down this trail was clumsy.
I know, I identify with that because I've felt that way a lot of times.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily that you feel scared. You're just constantly on the brakes.
Yeah.
And so, yes, because of the things that are out to get you, but you're not necessarily going that fast for it to be counted as like, oh, I barely got down that. Like, well, I easily made it through the trail. I just felt clumsy.
So you said before that she maybe was a bit worried about you having to look at her braking. What was the impetus for her to try it again on this trail? Was she
So,
like a little more open, like feeling like she wanted to feel less clumsy?
yeah, the part of it, I think, was trying to redeem herself
Yeah.
to say, no, I'm pretty sure when I'm riding by myself and I am just trying to ride a trail, I can get more front brake.
Yeah.
Plus, also, she wants to try and do some more racing. She's done the cross country stage race, she's done XEM, but she hasn't done any gravity. She's like, okay, I think I can. So let's work on the skills.
Cool. Okay. Makes sense. Because the race season is coming. I guess that's
Indeed.
for everyone too. So you guys would have the similar race season, you know, at least months wise as North America.
Yeah,
As
we
in North
match
America and
North
all that.
America. We start a little bit earlier in that we've already had things happening. Although I guess it depends where exactly you are.
Mm,
North America, the further south you are, the luckier you are that you can start your season earlier.
yeah. It also ends in like July because it gets so hot. But yeah, they're getting heated up as well to race. Whereas, you know, here in New Zealand, we're pretty much winding down.
Yeah.
It's
No, in
so
Perth,
wet.
April is probably the best month.
Ah,
It is fantastic here.
oh,
So we
cool.
had our one bit of rain. I think it's meant to be 26 degrees today. Probably not a cloud in the sky. Gets down to single digit Celsius overnight.
Oh,
But
nice.
that just means, yeah, you can get up early if you want it to be fresh, or you can go out late if you want a bit of heat. So yeah, nice. No one tells you that don't come to Australia in the middle of summer because we can actually enjoy our shoulder seasons
Oh, I see.
a whole
Okay.
lot more.
I'll keep that in mind because I didn't want to go in summer. So yeah,
You can go
you
lie on the
know,
beach, which is probably not the sort of thing you want to do.
no, that's boring. I want to ride. One of the things I found interesting is that when Kim put her BrakeAce on, you didn't go with her because
No,
you were sick, so she was doing this all on her own, which I think
no.
is
So we did the
awesome.
sessioning the key opportunities. I went with her.
Oh yeah, okay, okay,
I was sick, slowly dying on the side of the trail, so I sent her up for laps and
yeah, yeah.
just sat there and hung out. But no, I sent her out by herself the rest of the time.
Okay. Did she like pretty much do the BrakeAce method where which we talked about this one. This is actually our most popular episode. So you go, you do a run in the trail, and when you do that, well, you do a sighting run. That's step one. Step two is you do a fast run, and then, man, I'm butchering this. Step one, you sight the trail, so you ride it. Step two, you ride it fast. Step three, which is part of step two, is you identify your key opportunities because the app shows you them, and then step four, I'm still butchering it. You session your key opportunities, and then you ride it again. So it's actually 4 steps. I made it 5 for some reason just now, but you get the gist. Is that what you guys were doing?
Yes, we did those 3, 4, or 5 steps,
Okay.
almost. And so the difference was we didn't do a specific sighting run
Okay.
because she'd already been out. We were down there for multiple days. She'd ridden that trail already.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then sort of being interested in the fact that, okay, if I'm going to race this trail, I wouldn't have just been down it. Like I know the trail, but I only know what I remember about it. So I'm going to ride it that same way.
Yeah. Cool.
So we just went straight into, okay, we're going to do a top to bottom run of the trail she already had ridden previously, but just not right then because we were lucky we were camping right at the trails. We'd ridden this trail the day before. So the sighting run was from the day before. So that was done offline. Then we came back the next day, did this top to bottom run. Then we went out and went back to her key opportunities. And so looking at the Strava times was sort of important just to see how it's going. But for her, it was all about feeling less clumsy.
Yeah, cool. Do you by chance have access to her account, like looking at her braking right now, or no?
Oh, no, I don't.
Okay.
I could have done that if I was prepared. That's exactly what I would have done.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I guess what I'm wondering right now is like, I wonder what the heck those key opportunities look like. But you maybe remember some of it.
I definitely remember them.
Oh, cool.
So the main thing I found interesting compared to looking at my key opportunities were hers were longer.
Mm.
So it was super interesting in that of the 3 key opportunities, 2 of them were the same from her to me, like in the same location.
Yeah.
Which shows that that part of the trail is the complex part of that trail. And looking at where they were on the trail, like on the map, remembering, okay, that's that steep, rough bit with the corner. Like, yeah, it's the intimidating bits of the trail, but they came up differently. And so if we were to just go and ride the trail without the BrakeAce, we know we would have gone to probably those same parts of the trail and gone, yeah, this bit was a bit tricky. But the good thing about having those key opportunities is we could look at them in the way we needed to. And so because Kim's was extended, we could see that her key opportunity started at a point where there was a bit of a blind rise. So you came around a corner with a little bit of a chicane out of it, over this rise, down, there was just a little bump on the other side, slight left around a tree. You had some roots to get over, nothing like rotorua roots, just some little things, but with some loose over the top. Then you had a downhill right-hand corner that just out of sight actually turned into a little berm that caught you and put you back. So it was probably 160 degrees total around this corner. It just coming into it was downhill, rough, flat. And coming out of it was, well, when I say flat, like not bermed.
Right. So like you really need to have really good bike body separation to get around a turn like that.
Yeah, you've got to make the turn happen. And it's like it sort of had a little bit of an edge to the trail, but not enough to really give you the confidence that you could just lean into it.
Yeah, right.
However, at the end of the corner, after what you could see, did have a bit more support. It flattened off, which was part of the intimidation. That by flattened off, I mean it stopped going downhill. So you could really feel those G-forces if you committed to the bottom of this corner. But it was only maybe 10 centimeters high berm. Rock solid, but not super confidence inspiring. And so for her, I identified, well, actually, she's just following the trail, which was around a corner, through a chicane, over a bump, over another bump, around a corner. I was like, well, to start with, we can just get rid of that section of trail. So this was right at the very start of her key opportunity. I was like, this little chicane, we can cut the corner, we can stay right over this bump, which puts you on the side of the trail so there's no second bump, and opens up this left-hand corner that's coming.
Can we just clarify though, when you're saying cut the trail, you don't mean like one of those serious Strava lines that like.
Hey, I lived in France for 4 years. French line all the way.
Our French listeners might not like that, but you don't mean that, right? You mean,
I mean instead of, so it's a little chicane, it's a little S bend, and instead of just following the full arc around both of those left, right, you just ride it as a straight line, basically.
Yeah, cool.
So you're going right on the inside of that corner to the inside of the next corner. And that being on the inside is, if you're looking at the trail, you can see the main line. And we're talking about getting off that main line.
Yeah.
But just because it's not buffed down and perfect, it's still part of the trail.
Yeah. You know, that's interesting because I used to ride the same trails over and over and over and over back home. And it got to the point where, like, look, I can't get any better on these trails. So I started to kind of take this approach. Well, I'm never going to ride the main line, right? And that approach worked well on the East Coast US. When I moved to Rotorua, or even, you know, New Zealand in general, it's like the main line's usually like pretty good. I don't know if that's as bikes advanced a little bit, but I haven't been following that one. But it sounds like that's what you do, right? You try and follow this, like the main line's not the line. Let me see what else I can find.
Absolutely. Which is tricky because, as I said, we've got pretty limited traction on most of the trails here. Rotorua, you'd have it totally different way. The main line tends to become a bit rutted, and it just naturally it's supportive.
Yeah.
Until the point where you just end up in an axle deep hole. But yeah, we have just dead level, but it's swept away of all of this loose on the main line. But if you're not turning, doesn't actually matter.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Yeah, I'm all about, especially if I'm following someone and they'll be complaining like, sorry, like I'm slowing you down, I'm ruining your fun. Meanwhile, I'm behind them, zigzagging the whole way down the trail, trying to get off that main line the whole way, which, yeah, you can do once you slow down a little. And that just trains that habit of being able to pick lines as you ride.
Yeah.
And so in this case, I don't think I'd ever ridden this chicane section as a left-right corner. Just right from the beginning, it was, oh, the trail goes out to the right. So I'm not bothering going all the way left to then turn right again.
Yeah, cool. So I guess what Kim was doing then is by following the chicane, obviously you're turning, so you need a brake to be able to do those turns. So that then what BrakeAce did is identified that as an addition to the rest of the really tricky part of the key opportunity. So it just made it this massive key opportunity.
And if you think about what's going through your head as you're trying to ride this, so it's like, okay, I have to make a corner. I've got to make another corner. I've got to get over a bump. Oh, there's another bump. And around this little tree. Whereas if you can straighten it out and you're already looking to your line where you know you want to be over this blind roller, then all you're thinking about is getting to that. Just identifying that as your target, and you get to that. And so naturally, your braking will be much nicer because you're thinking about getting to that point rather than corner, bump. Okay. And so, yeah, this now, we're giving you less to think about by understanding where you're trying to get to. And so we simplified this down to, okay, our line doesn't matter, just the point we're trying to, our mark is what matters. The right-hand side of this roller that then doesn't have a second bump on the other side of it. So that then we can continue on with less to think about.
Yeah.
And we're going to let her deliberately, we're going to say, let's brake before this little tree. It's a left-hand corner that doesn't need any braking. However, to get the confidence to go through this little chicane and over this roller, we'll identify a braking zone just after both of those things. Because if we just keep saying, you don't need to brake, don't brake, don't brake, don't brake, as you're riding that trail, you're going to make yourself brake somewhere.
Yeah. You eventually have to slow down for a thing, right?
Yeah. Well, even if you have the ability. So this is much more a thing for women than men, where the ability is there, but the confidence is the thing that's lacking. And so I tend to talk about confidence braking. So we all know comfort braking, where we just hit the brakes and it gives us no benefit. It just felt good at the time, so we did. But confidence braking is where we deliberately use the brakes to know that we have used them. Oh, tell our mind, it's okay, we're in control. I've used the brakes. And so someone with less confidence needs more confidence braking. And I don't mean, oh, just dragging the brake down the trail. That's comfort braking, doesn't give you any benefit. I'm talking about picking a point where even though technically you can ride that section of trail and get through it without touching the brakes. If you pick a nice, safe, supportive, straight line where you can dab the brakes and it'll get your speed down enough that you feel confident again, then you can keep riding how you should ride, rather than letting the speed be just above that comfort level. And now you're just holding on and you're a passenger.
Yeah. That's scary. Yeah, I think. I guess I don't have the vocabulary because you're coming from a skills coaching background, so that's actually a good word. But I guess I never called it that. But one of the things that I always prescribed when I was coaching fitness is like, well, you're going out to this trail, you're going to race an enduro, you need to know what the dirt's like. So you need to like be able to stop. So figure out how quickly you can stop on this kind of dirt, and that'll make you a lot more confident when you're braking. And it sounds like that's basically a similar thing that you guys were doing.
Yeah, because if your brain is questioning it, your head's going to want to protect itself. If it doesn't know the answer, it's not going to let itself push it any harder.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't want to find out well, I guess maybe some people want to find out by trial and error, but like it's better to just like test it and see, okay, this is about the kind of braking I need to do.
Yeah.
And you guys
But
tried it
also,
in the key opportunity.
everyone has their max speed. It doesn't matter if you're a total beginner or other than the top level pros who are just, I don't know, there's something wrong with their minds. But 99% of the world has a max speed that you can get to. And at that point, if you go any faster, you just can't process what's happening anymore. You just freak out.
Mm.
And so you can train that to increase a bit, but you don't want to just suddenly go above your max speed for what you can comprehend. Because once that ability to process what's coming, filter out the things that don't matter, is really what's happening, you then aren't in control.
Yeah.
So you want to keep your speed to a level that you can process where you're meant to be riding, what you're doing, make your body react. So that's what we're partly doing here with Kim, but also just making sure that she feels like she's driving the bike. She's not a passenger.
Yeah.
And so we've gone, okay, this section of trail we get through, then we're allowed to touch the brakes to slow down a bit because there's still a lot more to come.
Yeah.
And we know that the actual technical part of the riding is just around this corner. So we say, get on the brakes. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be slowing down in a few meters anyway. Instead of thinking, just don't use the brakes, and then not knowing when you will get a chance to use them, just say, yep, use it. We're not going to win a world championship anyway. We want to survive. We want to feel good. And the more we can feel good, the more we'll have more flow. So we say you're allowed to touch the brakes. Go around this little corner and then wait. Don't brake again until just before you have to start turning. So it's one of those cases where I said there's all these routes, but there's very much chances between the routes or next to the routes to get on the brakes really hard. So we did the standard identify braking zone, practice a couple of runs, starting braking earlier, and then start shifting that start point later.
Yeah, I've seen you do this before. You did a similar session with your friend Ryan. That's on YouTube. I think his channel's Ryan Dillon.
Ryan Dillon MTB.
Yeah, that was a really good video because you like same thing. You guys did that, and then you coached him through his key opportunities, and he recorded it. I remember you you used your foot to like draw a line in the pea gravel or the dirt or whatever, and this is your braking zone. Try and start braking here. Is that what you guys did again?
Yeah, and so it was a bit different. So with Ryan's one, the very first one we did there, it was just a big open space, and the concern was the braking bumps. So you had a lot of area, and so for him it was like, okay, there's no reason to be braking earlier. It's a long straight run in. Whereas with Kim's one, it was still downhill, so we're still increasing speed, and there was all of these routes. So you actually started to get into a little bit of the feature already. And so we were really having to be mindful of, it's not just we've got to start braking later. It's we have to time it between these things. So we actually started off really slow, and she just got some confidence up in the fact that she could stop. So actually rode in and came to a complete stop and just did that because we didn't have that much ability to start with a big braking zone and shrink it down to a little one, because we're on the trail at this point that already is defining limited braking zones.
Yeah, right.
So we just got used to, like, exactly like you said, how much grip does the dirt have?
Good to find that out, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, because one of the things you can do if you do come to a stop and the trail's still sloping down, well, you can just do one of those false stops, which is illegal in the US. Like, you gotta stop at that stop sign. Well, there's no rules like that in mountain biking. Like, you can stop in air quotes and then let off the brakes and roll through it. And that's a really good way to kind of understand how your bike's going to react as you exit the turn, because you don't have insane speed. Maybe you can get through it with a little bit more control and maybe not touch the brakes potentially. But that stopping thing really helps you to understand what kind of grip you have. So yeah, I like that one.
Plus, in this case, because we're talking about trying to build her confidence, that's the main goal here, was feel less clumsy, feel more in control, therefore have confidence, be driving the bike. Was after coming to a stop, she could continue on and complete this corner, which was actually in 2 parts, because previously she just had to tackle it as one obstacle. But now it's like, okay, I've practiced learning how quickly I can come to a stop, which means now this second part of the turn, that's this nice, smooth, supportive berm, even though it's only little, she could ride as its own feature and have a chance to get some exposure to what riding that nicely feels like. I think that's the number one thing in mountain biking, is knowing what it's going to feel like before you do it. A beginner doesn't have any exposure to any features. And as you start to get more advanced and continue on, you get more exposure to what things feel like. And so you know when you're going to make that decision, I'm going to hit this thing, what it's going to feel like.
Yeah.
And by doing this drill, she was able to come in and get the confidence that, hey, that second part of this corner is really nice. I have fun going around that fast. I don't need to be dragging the brakes the whole way around it. And so, yeah, we did a bit of this. Starting to get pretty tired by this point. So this was just the first key opportunity. It's like, yeah, let's not spend too much time on one thing.
Yeah. How many times did you do it? Like, you would have sessioned it a few times?
Yeah. Well, Kim sessioned it a few times. I'd lay down on the side of the trail.
Oh.
I did a couple of times because for me it was a key opportunity as well, so I was interested. Kim probably did this one 8, 9, 10 times.
Okay.
Like quite a few, because it was in her head. She knew it.
Yeah.
She was there for a long time thinking, like, I don't trust this corner.
Would that take like 15, 20 minutes or something like that?
Yeah. Well, because we weren't going far up the trail. And especially initially, it was deliberately starting super close so that it could come in and just brake in this one braking zone. And so then we did a few longer ones. And so it was probably 20 minutes.
Yeah, cool.
On that.
That's not too bad. That's good bang for buck when you know where to go and you can quantify your improvements.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was knowing that it was a whole long key opportunity, is because we didn't just focus on the corner. We identified the run-in as well, where her braking had started.
Yeah, cool.
And then we moved on. Continued down the trail. I forgot to check my second key opportunity on the way past. Although looking at it, I was like, okay, I know that bit of trail. But we continued just around past that and realized on the way, okay, it's going to be this corner. Got there and like, yep. Another one which was just blind. And so it was it's even less complicated, but come up to this corner. There was a blind, what used to be a jump, a little step up, just maybe 1.5 meters long, just over bike length of distance, but beaten down. So it was now just, you went over a little bump and then up over a rise that put you down into a, like, probably 180-degree corner. It was almost split into 2. It went straight and downhill for a little bit in the middle, but it was one of those corners that had a tree right in the exit, right where you wanted to just let it go. You're picking up speed on the downhill, another tree. So this one, we got to that, well, actually, it was right in the middle of the corner that Kim's key opportunity was happening. Like, okay, what I can imagine is happening is she's coming over this rise, and then while going over the rise, realizing there's a corner, or thinking that, well, maybe I'm not going to make the corner, getting on the brakes, and then still having to get around the next corner. So getting like the finish of the corner, getting on the brakes the second time.
I see. I can see why something like that. I'm just envisioning this section in my head. I can see why that would show up as a key opportunity, because BrakeAce really doesn't like braking up hills. And I'm assuming that's what was happening, because it was maybe like a bit of an impact, probably really fast into it. I don't know. I didn't see the trail.
No, so it's still a pretty flat run in. So you're coming reasonably fast into it, but not crazy. But it's only a little bump up and over. Like it's the landing, or it's being used as the landing of a jump. So it's, I don't know, it's probably a meter, less than a meter high, just a bump. So yes, she's probably using her brakes into the up part of it, because that's where either you still can't quite see what's on the other side, or you've just seen that there is the corner on the other side and it's really close.
Yeah.
So yeah, suddenly you've lost a lot of your momentum by hitting this little bump and being on the brakes. And then from a riding standpoint, you've now probably compressed into that, unweighted a bit off the other side. Your suspension's not helping you. Your body position is who knows what. And you've still got to get around a corner and down a hill and around another corner. So this time it was a lot less about the braking and more about body position, where we said, if we can ride into this, get high enough to be basically pumping down the landing, then we know our wheels are on the ground. We know we've got lots of traction as we're coming into that corner. And also, again, we're driving the bike. We're in control. Doesn't matter that there's this bump here. And you just got more confidence from making that body movement happen. So in this one, only did a couple of runs in, just working on probably three runs into it, getting a bit faster each time, but really just working on getting the body to be coming down on the backside of this bump. And so that requires not letting the bike push you up and over the bump. So you have to get super high before, absorb the uphill up into your body, and then move both the bike and the body down the back of this ramp. And then you're just in this attacking position. You got weight through the tires. They're ready to turn. So you do. Didn't even care about braking.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that one. I like that it was a key opportunity that was identified via braking, and the method to improve there wasn't about braking differently.
Yeah,
it was about
no
riding.
way to get around this corner, at least at her level or most people's level, without braking. You had to brake somewhere. And so we're just trying to make sure that you're doing the corner confident, and then you're probably going to touch the brakes.
Yeah.
And depending on how fast you're going, you'll either make that next corner smoothly, or you're still going to be dragging the brakes to make sure you don't hit that tree. But not hitting the tree is a pretty good thing to prioritize. So we're not going to say, try not to brake, try and get faster.
Yeah.
It's only a small section of the trail anyway. However, by thinking about on the run-in that we're in control and we're making the bike move, we've deliberately reduced the braking on the run-in. We're happy to have more speed. We know we've got more traction. And so when we do get on the brakes after this first bit of the corner, they should work really well.
Yeah. So I guess that even that is a nice way to explain it, because it's more about being confident to carry that speed. And as a result, there's a little bit less braking before it. So yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of ways we could describe that
natural.
one. Yeah.
You want to ride your bike without using the brakes.
It feels nice.
Much nicer.
Yeah, it feels way nicer.
And so when you're going down a steep, rocky trail and can't get off the brakes, you know it doesn't feel right, even though you really don't want to get off the brakes. But that's a case of, well, you probably don't want to get off the brakes. If you don't have the skills, the control, the knowledge of the trail and how quickly you can slow down, don't just get off the brakes, because hitting that tree at the bottom is pretty much guaranteed to be much slower than just getting down this bumpy, rough section on the brakes.
I always say that, like, the slowest way down a trail is like to be laying on the ground, right? Like, keep your bike upright and you'll be way faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is a case of, don't worry about get off the brakes, go faster. It's, if that's what you need, right. So in this case, we've just identified Well, there's a section of trail that tries to be in control of us and throw the body around. So we're going to prepare ourselves, put a body in a position that we don't care what the trail's doing. We're going to use that to our advantage and be in control. Easy. So that we were probably there for less than 5 minutes.
Oh, nice.
That was
Okay.
an easy one.
That's a real good bang for buck.
Absolutely. And I did a couple of run-ins in as well, because again, it was one of my key opportunities. And I was like, yep, exactly the same thing. So for me, at higher speeds, I was able to straighten out the entry a bit more by sort of hopping over a little bit of a bush, just naturally put me in a straight line and naturally put me into like, okay, now I'm moving up and down. So I almost rode the jump as if it was there. It was more a bit of a manual, but use that first bit of a bump to let me get down the back of the next one. Wasn't enough of the bump still there to actually jump it. And so this was just using the body position, but exactly the same thing. Just I was then really leaning the bike over as soon as I got down the other side. So basically the press down the other side was a bit more complex. I was now pressing down with the bike angled, ready to get into the corner.
Did you get through it without braking at all, or did you still brake as well?
I'd still braked.
Okay, cool.
There were both parts of this corner were almost 90 degrees in a very short space. And you could do each corner. The issue was you just pick up the speed between them. If there had been a bit of rain, you might be able to do it. So we'll see. We've got a race back there next month, I think. So it's going to be tested.
Well, if you guys go back, it'd be interesting because you can compare the flow score in this dry dirt versus what it is when it's damp and maybe better traction, right? So you can just look at your flow score. Were you able to ride your flow? Were you able to lower your flow score when the dirt was better? So you can directly compare that same trail in different conditions just using that one score. Yeah,
that will be interesting because I definitely feel this is the first time I'd been down there when it was super dry and hard packed, and the rolling resistance was fantastic. You could roll really fast. And so potentially it was faster to ride the trails this time. But that limited traction did mean I was having to get on the brakes. But I didn't really trust the brakes as much. So,
I see.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it varies. So many different variables. What does the flow score say?
If you throw in the race variable, what you don't want to happen is those race nerves to get you. And then you brake more just because you're racing, which happens a lot.
Yeah.
So
we
should actually report back on that. Yeah. So I guess there would have been a third key opportunity.
Key opportunity, indeed. The finish. So the end of this trail had a bit of a tabletop jump. First of all, you did a little bit of an uphill and between a tree, between the two parts of the trunk. And so you're pretty slow. But then after that, it was just a nice flowy rollers, jumps, little bit of a downhill left to the right that was totally blind, but not much of a corner at all. And then some more rollers. And then it finished by squeeze next to a tree over a root, did a very sudden 90-degree turn and down onto the fire road to finish. And Kim's final key opportunity was pretty much that entire section. From the first point, you start picking up some speed.
Do you remember, because one of the things when you highlight, so it shows your key opportunities on the map, and then you can highlight it with your finger as you scroll through the map, zoom in and all that. It shows you how long that key opportunity was, along with your flow score, brake balance, whether it was modulation, duration, or intensity that was your opportunity. Do you remember how long these opportunities were?
I don't remember how long. However, I do remember that Kim had the exclamation of, "What? I wasn't on the brakes that whole time." No, we're not talking. A key opportunity isn't a brake event.
Yes.
A key opportunity may be one braking event, but it also can be multiple. I was like, look. And so she's like, oh, yeah, okay. So it showed that there were multiple brake events.
Yeah.
Look on the plot and see where they were.
Yes.
But they were close enough together. And in the way she was braking, it just became that whole section the braking needs to be worked on, or
Yes.
your riding needs to be worked on, because the braking shows you're not confident.
Yes. So what BrakeAce is doing is it's looking for unfavorable events, and in a way how big they are, but also it's looking at how close they are to each other. So if you have 20 unfavorable events in a row, that's going to be one key opportunity if they're close enough. So that's what was happening.
Yeah, exactly. And so it would have been that she did this first little bit, though she probably hit the brakes before the first tabletop jump, just not having the confidence for sending it over jumps. And then probably at the top of this downhill corner, just going, oh, I don't know what's there. And then probably because it turned again at the bottom and was blind, probably again. And then just after that, you just pick up so much speed that she just got to a point where she was like, nope, this is my limit. Even though it's just pretty easy rollers at this point, a nice wide trail, just no, too fast. Get on the brakes. And so this was a pretty easy one. We walked up this, talked about what the trail was, and rode down it once. Simply going, well, we know after we come through this tree, you can ride through. The jump is just a tabletop and there's plenty of space. And the corner that goes downhill, you can see that it's not tight. You don't have to brake, but we're going to say this is where you'll let yourself brake a little bit to then continue around this corner, and the entire final section, it doesn't matter how fast you're going. This is a point where you can actually go above your comfort speed because there's not really anything happening. You just know that at the end, before we get to this final tree, that's where you hit the brakes. And that was it.
Yeah, easy. I like that one actually, because sometimes we're going so fast on trails, and it's like, actually, what is the speed I'm comfortable to ride at? But one of the things that I always like to do is just point it down a gravel road, because it like feels a little bit like a trail. You pick up like crazy amount of speed, but all you got to do is go straight and maybe hop over a rut, right? So you get this insane level of speed, and you just kind of need to hold on until a turn or whatever.
Well, and the good thing with that fiber is you can see what that next whatever is.
Yeah, it's
So
important.
the main thing is don't get caught up on all of the other bits.
Yeah,
That filtering out of the things that don't matter is actually the skill to go fast. It's not the how to make yourself do all the things along the way.
Yeah.
It's really about not doing anything, identifying what does matter and quickly ignoring everything else. So remember last year, I think we mentioned this in a podcast when we were talking about tires. We went up to a new race destination no one had ever really been to before. And one of the stages, I almost got the fastest time of the day. There was a cheeky line that I should have taken.
One of those actual straight lines, say.
Yeah, this actually was a straight line.
One of those you learned in France.
Anyway, I won't say too much because we're racing there for state champs this year. But there was a long, straight, skinny downhill, but totally straight. And you'd just been through some totally gnarly, exposed, loose stuff. And now you've just come out of this hairpin corner that barely has any support, and you're just going as fast as you can. No reason to slow down. Very like little bit of side to side, but trees are pretty much non-existent out there. Level trail. But at the end of it was little sort of steps down through a rock. And so you could actually launch over those. There was no reason to slow down. But looking at how fast everyone was going down that section, you could see the amount of people that were just, nope, I'm at my limit. I'm at my limit. But the trick is know when you're going to brake. So exactly what we talked about earlier in this episode is just once you know where you're going to brake, if you let yourself brake there, it's easier to let yourself not brake anywhere else. So this rock steps at the end, you could go over it without braking. However, by telling myself I'm going to brake at the top of those, I could do this entire run-in without considering how fast I was going. And so that's the same thing we're looking at, and obviously a much slower level. But we're like, okay, we've identified that there's nothing along this trail that matters. There's bumps, there's things happening, but we've looked at them and gone, doesn't matter. Ignore them, filter them out. We can ride this and we will survive. We just know we're going to break at the end, and know that once we see that tree, that's where we break.
I like the idea of identifying the break events as you're heading into it. Like, you're looking at it and like, okay, this is where I'm going to break. I think for me, maybe that's not something I normally do. I just am kind of riding. But I think that would be like pretty helpful, especially on my key opportunities.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps where you don't have massive elevation trails.
Yeah, okay.
So the more you're going down, the more you use the brakes, but also the easier it is to pick speed up again.
Yeah.
Knowing where you're going to brake and not braking until then is really beneficial when you don't have the ability to pick up your speed again.
Yeah.
Because if you do touch the brakes, it's really hard to then get back to that speed you were at before.
Yeah, because then that'll affect what your next break events are. But also, this is why we only do 3 key opportunities, is because you might break. I don't know how many times you guys braked on that trail, but around here you might break over 100 times. It's like, well, I'm not going to focus on my braking zone for 100 different places. I will never remember that. 3 places is easy to remember.
Because yeah, you could still. So I turned on braking events on the map, and you could see it's braking at pretty much every single corner down that trail.
Yeah.
But the key opportunities were only at those 3 main areas.
Yeah. So by like taking this low hanging fruit approach, the goal was to feel less clumsy. What was the result of doing that?
So Kim went back by herself and rode and came back super happy.
Ah, cool.
So I was like, yeah, definitely. She's like, I did not do what I wanted to do at the like first big scary downhill corner. She was like, no, didn't ride it well at all. Just freaked out. She would say terror braking was happening.
That's another new one to add to the vocabulary.
And so I was like, yeah, terror braking's sort of good and sort of bad.
Sounds scary.
Because yeah, if you are scared, you want to slow down, you want to be in control, but at the same time, when you do brake, it impacts your riding. So it's potentially better not to, but you do need the skills to be able to survive whatever comes next. Because that's the big thing. We'd say, okay, get off the brakes, ride faster. Anyone can do that. Right now, if you were to go out to that trail that's been, you really want to go faster on, it's been something you've been fighting with forever, you can just get off the brakes more and you will go faster.
And you will crash.
For some amount of time.
Yeah.
Potentially a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
Because it's what happens afterwards. We're braking for a reason. But she did say she identified, like she knew those sections were coming. So as she was riding the trail, didn't care so much about the rest of the trail. Just rode it as clumsy as always, but rode it. Did manage to get a faster time, but was super happy with the fact that she could come up to those sections knowing that they were there. And yep, the main terrifying one, still a key opportunity. That next corner with the bump leading into it, did what she wanted to do and no longer a key opportunity. The end, where it's super fast, still now her next 2 key opportunities. Broken down to this like down, left, downhill, right, only a little bit of a corner. She was braking a lot into this blind corner, because she was coming in fast. She had been off the brakes and then slowing down for this little bit of a corner because it was blind. And then at the very end, getting hard on the brakes for this final little 90 degrees and off the trail. Done. So she'd achieved what she wanted to on all except for that first scary corner. However, she had shrunk down the amount of space it was over. So it's not saying that she rode the same way. She just had that as a key opportunity. And from knowing that trail, I would think it would be almost impossible not to have that part be a key opportunity. Because it is fast, but it's a critical section.
Yeah.
It's a key section of trail. It's rough. It's long corner, but it's downhill into it, but rough and braking, and then the rough on the corner as well. So yeah, you could get it better, but considering this is a green trail, your braking events throughout the whole trail are going to be limited in their intensity, duration.
Yeah. This is a thing that we've seen happen pretty regularly, right? There's a key opportunity that you session in session, and like you and your mates have the same key opportunity, even though you've like tried to nail it, and you're getting better at it. And so the good thing about that is you can use the flow score to track how you've improved in that key opportunity. You direct comparison from one run to the next. So is my flow score lower now that I've sessioned it? Yeah, it is. Or no, it's not. Well, okay, let's have a look. But also, if it keeps coming up and you're like, I don't want to session this one again, I've sessioned this one a zillion times, you can flag it. And that's an important feature that we added in BrakeAce, where you can untick it. So say it's key opportunity 1, you untick that one and you tick key opportunity 4. And now you're just looking at those 3 key opportunities, which are your next ones to improve. So you don't have to constantly be looking at this thing where you feel like you've hit your ceiling in improving. So in that case, when Kim goes back, she can untick those key opportunities if they come again, and she'll have 3 new ones, which are
because I
3
think
new
for
places
her,
to
she
work
would
from.
probably keep that main one, knowing that that is like of all the, because it's that thing of you could just untick it and move on to more key opportunities, but at some point that's a lot to think about on a trail. And the great thing about limiting the number of key opportunities is, well, you're going to remember the rest of the trail anyway, but where do you put your focus on what to think about?
Yeah.
And different levels of rider, and also different depending how many times you've got an opportunity to ride that trail. You don't want to think about the details of really getting a maximum out of every section of the trail.
Correct.
Because there's just too much to think about, especially if you're doing an enduro and you've got 6 or 7 stages to do.
So 6 or 7 stages times 3 key opportunities. Like you don't want to then double that to 42 key opportunities, right? So 21 is good enough.
So, however, this final one of like coming to a stop, I was like, yeah, that is for her. She's never going to get around this corner at speed. She's always going to have to slow down, around this tree, over a root, sharp corner. But by that point, she's feeling good on the trail. So like that one's probably an uncheck. Just remember, yep, it's all fast until that point. The other one coming in, yes, definitely. This downhill and around a blind little corner can be worked on.
Ah, okay, cool.
So she would leave that one. But yeah, the big thing for her was she was happy that she did feel good. Plus, her brake balance was much more balanced.
Ah, what did it end up with? So
I should have checked.
Yeah.
But much more than 2% on the front brake.
That's good.
It might have been like 80-20.
Cool. That's pretty normal.
Something, like I didn't even going up on some other trails. But yeah, it was, especially because of the sort of long downhill corners, it's not surprising to use quite a bit of back brake.
Yeah, I know you've gotten 50-50 a few times, which we still don't know if that's like the goal, but
it's the goal because it can be.
Yeah, it's possible, so I'm gonna aim for that. I'm not sure if it would be faster if you use more front brake, but I think we talked about this in a few of our episodes. Like everyone's using the rear brake more. Even some of the World Cup riders are using 90% rear brake. We've measured it.
I am now an exception to this rule, though. Just a little side note. I now brake a whole lot more with my front brake. True. And when I say now, I was in Medina, ended up in the emergency department because I sliced my wrist open.
Oh, no.
Skylined, first corner, 200 meters in, had a couple of pebbles wedged into my wrist that put a nice gash in there. Luckily avoided any artery, but that was my braking hand. And I tried my best to take a rest, but I was back out in Medina the next day. So
use the front brake.
I just had to use my front brake that day. And now it's sort of been stuck that way. So it'll be interesting to see once I get racing again, if that sticks in racing circumstances.
Yeah, well, I think we should keep talking about brake balance because, well, first off, the industry doesn't get it because the industry has been stocking smaller rear rotors since the beginning of time, even though everyone's using the rear brake more, which we've now unlocked. But also, like, it's so different between different riders, and it still blows my mind, like, how brake balance can be so different, and you can go like a similar speed if you're two riders, one's 50-50, one's 90-10, and they could be going the same speed. It just still blows my mind. Still confused about it. I don't know.
Oh, you can even see XC riders especially that'll use 2% front brake.
Yeah.
It's not unheard of. And so really it comes back to confidence. You ride in what feels good. If you know it works for you,
yeah, for
that
sure.
is actually a pretty good way to do it. Once you get to more technical trails, that varies a bit, especially if you're riding in some more difficult conditions. Once it gets wet, slippery, then, okay, we have to start looking at actually being able to use control of which brake, but only in individual features, only at certain points. Overall down a trail, well, yeah, we haven't seen any way to prove that one way of braking is better than another.
No.
It's just as long as you feel confident.
Yeah, maybe one day someone will get to that. I don't think we'll tackle that. Someone else can. But that's cool.
If we'd seen some consistency, I think it would be a great challenge to take on understanding brake balance. But
yeah.
we really have not seen any consistency at all.
No, not at all. Yeah, this has been actually pretty interesting. First off, thanks to Kim for being a good sport and letting us talk about her braking. She went from not wanting you to even look at it to letting us talk about it. So that's good.
Yeah, we'll see. I might even share publicly some of her brake stats so you can see what we're talking about here.
Well, that'd be cool. I think what would be cool is if we had some screenshots on our website, on a blog article with this podcast link to it, because this is like a serious thing. Like, there are a lot of people that feel clumsy on trails. I feel clumsy on trails a lot too, but now we have tools that can help us to feel less clumsy and to ride and have more fun. And I want to tell everyone about this. So I think we could have some screenshots or something on the website.
And even these, cool. So, okay, we've got the map with data on it. Then we've got a plot with this graph's got a whole lot of data on it as well. But as a non-technical person, she was still able to go in. She really enjoyed comparing the before and the after, where it's simply she would open up the app, go to that ride, click on the key opportunity on the map, it would zoom in on the plot. And what was interesting to her was just looking at front and rear brake and these little spikes that came up of like, okay, this is where I'm using the brakes. And she was just trying to get front and rear to sort of line up better, to know like, okay, I am using both when I try and slow down.
Yeah.
And to have less on and off. Like, okay, instead of doing I've braked over these 10 seconds with a couple of seconds in the middle of nothing, it's now, okay, I've braked over 6 or 7 seconds and only done it all in one go.
Yeah.
And then trying to look at how much she's just on rather than just a little bit. So the shape of that. But because it was just per key opportunity and not worrying about the rest of the trail, didn't matter what this graph looked like for the whole trail. It was just great. This one key opportunity, I know what that means because I can picture where on the trail that bit of braking's happening. I was like, yes, look, I did manage to stay off the brakes over that bump. I did just do it all in one go in the middle of between the corners and then continued on. Even if now I can still improve that, there's still something I can change. I can see what has changed. It's not just whether it feels better or not.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Well, thanks for that, Kim. And thanks for that, Rowan. That was a good one. And
we've brought Kim's riding in a couple of times now. So
yeah. Now we fully divulged
one day she might be a star on the podcast as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. So obviously, yeah, because we've ride a lot. Our lives riding. I would say most people, their life should be riding, but not everyone gets the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Cool. Sweet. Well, hopefully by the time this is published, if there is a blog, I'll link that blog in the description here, So you can check that out and see more about Kim.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Ron. See you next
Cheers.
time.
See you next time.